Hello, welcome to the U Talk Show. I'm Kyle. I've practically just gotten out of bed feeling like shit, and we are doing shit post week. Quite literally, that's what I think we're going to call it. And
Does that
I've just
include us
written, not
chatting from the last episodes? Is this also shitpost
maybe,
week?
maybe. I mean, look, the audio quality on them was crap because I forgot to turn my microphone on. But I mean, look, one of them was a great discussion. The other one was just kind of us catching up. The great discussion might actually be put there. So, yes and maybe yes as well. But yeah, this today we're gonna great, great conversation of the ages. Why communism and fascism are fucking stupid. Who wants to start first? You want to start first, Sauce?
Okay, so
I mean, just
the
your
first thing I'm
heritage
going to
alone
say,
makes you an expert on fascism, does it not?
in the same way that it makes me an expert on Judaism,
That was good.
the historic approach to challenging
Oh,
communism
just before
has
you
been.
go, just before you go any further, no, this isn't alcohol. It just looks like alcohol because I'm drinking it from an alcohol bottle. This is
Kyle
bottom of
drinks
the
from
bottle. Am I
bottoms,
right?
everyone. Kyle is a top, and he has his patented secure password generator of going to bottoms on the internet and saying, "Hey, cutie." Now, traditionally speaking, the approach to
Caffeine
challenging
juice.
communism has been to point out that people keep doing communism and people keep dying about it. And
Yeah,
the diehard communists will say, oh, that's just because those states weren't communist enough. We haven't reached full communism. When we reach full communism, everything will be fine. And this is the idea that communism is an endpoint that you get to, and all the suffering in the world that you can create is justified as long as you get to full communism. So, any communists who actually think that, please just never go for a
Pause. I
position
need
of
to make a point.
power and
I
keep
need to
it
make.
to like no. Keep it to like politics in the pub when you get like sloppy drunk and you're like, oh man, I think the Russians absolutely were right to send tanks into Hungary. The Hungarians didn't know how good they had it. Like, no, I'm not taking that. Fuck right off. Sorry, Kyle.
Yeah. Okay. So look. Okay, you really touched on what I think is part of the problem there. Because communism is fucking stupid. Because basically, it's not just an endpoint, but it's a prescribed exact way of how to get there, and they both don't work. So first off, how they get there, absolutely stupid. Doesn't address any of the actual problems, and of course it doesn't, because Karl Marx was a loser who didn't know shit about the real world. Like seriously, he refused to
Karl
work
Marx
in
is
order to
technically
support
one
his
of Germany's
family and
most
let.
successful exports.
Yes, but he's also a loser who couldn't support his family because he was unwilling to do any work, any physical work at all, and he let two of his sons starve to death.
Karl
The guy
Marx
was
is
a loser.
Germany's equivalent of Australia's Rupert Murdoch.
Yeah, but Rupert Murdoch at least does something. Karl
No,
Marx
he
did fuck
doesn't.
all. I mean, look, he does attend meetings and he does order people around. You know, it's something. Like it's the bare minimum for someone in his position. Karl Marx didn't even do that. So Karl Marx is a loser. And again, like two of his sons starved to death. So he didn't know shit about the real world, and therefore he didn't know shit about how to get anywhere in the real world politically or economically or any vein of that. And the
But
second
just like to
point
point
is
out that Karl Marx did have, as far as I can tell, at least 7 children. So it's entirely possible. Oh no, I'm seeing 7 or 8 children, and 4 of them died in infancy or childhood. Um,
I wouldn't be surprised if the other two were his fault as well. But that being said, I do have to make this point. Really have to make this point. The second thing is the end goal. no good political philosophy can be an end goal. Because once you get there, you need to think about what you do. You can have end goals, or rather, you can have goals that you want to achieve, goals that it's like, once we achieve this, things are going to be a lot better. But it needs to be a methodology. The reason why the scientific method works so much is because it isn't an end goal. It's a methodology that you can keep repeating on the exact same thing over and over again to keep improving it. That's why the scientific method works so well. People misapply the scientific method, or rather, they just claim to have used the scientific method when they haven't. But, that's not the fault of the method itself. That's the fault of idiots who want to pretend that they have some sort of legitimacy into their stupidity. So you need something, and we'll probably discuss this, why our philosophy is obviously the greatest in our next episode. But that's communism. That's why communism's absolutely stupid. Let's move on to fascism.
No, I want to keep on communism for a moment, because there was another point I wanted to make.
Real quickly, we're gonna reach halfway through soon. So
you're the person who started rambling about how Karl Marx is a loser, my dude. Like, how is the job hunt going?
I'm not wrong. Huh?
How's the job hunt going for you?
Hey, that's not fair. I'm at least trying. Okay, he didn't even try. And I have held jobs in the past. I've been employed for more than a decade of my life.
Okay. Now, the other problem with communism is that I disagree that it's just an end goal. The idea is obviously to maintain full communism, because that is how you get the workers' paradise. But the problem is that every time someone's tried to implement communism, they've made shit a lot worse. Like, if your path to the workers' paradise involves trampling the blood of the workers under your boot because you have one prescribed way of doing things, and if anyone disagrees with you, they're just a traitor. Change is meant to make things better. You can't just keep making things worse in the name of one day it'll fall into place and everything will be better. You have to be able to demonstrate that you are making things better incrementally. Otherwise, nobody can trust that you're going to do the right thing when you're in power. And that is
you can't just
actually
go, the ends justify the means. If one, you never get to the ends, and two, the means are that freaking terrible,
are abhorrent.
Yeah.
Though this also plays into fascism, right? Because when you look at fascism, it's okay. So the historical definition of fascism was a system of power vested in a united populace, and usually under the auspices of, usually under the direction of a state apparatus. More recently, fascism has been defined as an attempt to unite the populace under the direction of a charismatic leader, which is because we have the traditional resurgence of fascism as a cause of World War II, where we've had Benito Mussolini and Adolf Hitler and Hirohito, I think it was, during World War II over in Japan. And yes, I know that Japan had a rising militarism problem since the mid-1920s. We're not going to cover that here because...
Is Japan really fascist?
If I have to... Yeah, absolutely. But if I have to explain, like, the 11 fingers...
Define fascism. Because I've got a really good idea of what
a united populace under the direction of a charismatic leader.
That's it. I mean...
Yep, and I mean, Japan, in that respect, because of cultural considerations, was already prone to that sort of unification, because there is a much larger sense of doing things for the social order in the Japanese culture than there was in a lot of European cultures.
Yeah, but by that definition, though, you could consider like, how many different countries today that are clearly not fascist to be fascist, and hell, even Australia at one point in the past could have been considered fascist under that definition.
I mean, it's true. Kevin Rudd can get it.
Yeah. I mean, I'd also argue golf level. Actually, it just occurred to me.
Absolutely, Gough
Could you
Whitlam.
ever argue that a liberal prime minister had ever been that charismatic as to unite pretty
Yes,
much
I
everyone?
can.
Who? You say John
Harold
Howard.
Holt.
Harold Holt?
I think Harold Holt was liberal.
He was liberal. He wasn't in for particularly long, though, was he? A couple of years?
Less than that. I think it was a couple of months. Yeah, it was a couple of months that he was in office.
Okay,
Because
interesting.
he was like,
I need to learn more
you
about
have to
Harold Holt.
understand. You have to understand. He could get it.
You know,
Like he was
let's
wandering around the beach in speedos before Tony Abbott made it fashionable for a prime minister to do so.
How do you know if Tony Abbott wasn't just a fan of Harold Holt?
Tony Abbott was unable to sufficiently commit to the bit.
Yeah. Okay. My portable
But
keyboard is not plugged in.
seriously,
I
with
need to look up the definition of fascism because I want to get like, okay, what's a proper definition of fascism that actually describes a fascist kind of society?
no, I've already described it to you. I've described you the textbook definition of fascism, which is a political system seeking power to unify the people under the direction of a charismatic leader.
Yeah, but that's pretty much every political system. Every political system wants to
And that's why
unify
social
everyone
science
under.
is bullshit.
I mean, okay, that's
It
a
is
question, or rather,
astrology.
that's a.
It is astrology for psychologists who want to break into science.
Okay, so that's a conversation for another time. That's another great shitpost topic. Let's discuss. You know, give me a definition of fascism that works.
A definition of fascism that works?
Yeah, isn't
Okay,
fascism also marked by the need for an ethno-state or the want for an
no,
ethno-state?
no, that's a later addition to the definition. A definition of fascism that works is a political system of power that seeks to unify the people against an enemy, real or imagined, under the direction of a charismatic leader that we later learned has committed atrocities so that we can write the history books in such a way that that leader is written off as a useless fascist.
Okay. I mean, to be honest, that you almost sounded sarcastic then. In a funny way. Okay. I still don't know if that definition works. Is fascism just very nebulous by nature?
Yes.
Wow. How am I supposed to call something stupid if we can't even properly define it?
And that's why fascism is stupid. It is a word that you can apply to basically any system of government that you don't like or that has committed evil deeds without more closely examining the circumstances under which that government has formed, the circumstances under which those deeds were committed.
I mean, to be honest, fascism just sounds like almost like a semi-popular monarchical kind of, I don't know, I'm seeking a word here. Push, societal leaning, where they basically want a monarch, but they want a monarch that's popular.
You mean like Her Royal Majesty Queen Elizabeth II, long may she reign in our hearts.
I mean, look, I wasn't particularly fond of her, but I didn't dislike her at the same time.
Well, a lot of people were fond of her, and that was
Hmm.
actually an interesting trick of psychology. She was involved in the administration of a country during a period of variable prosperity. Like she was there during feast and famine, and people, for better or worse, identified with her.
So it'd be like basically if she decided to take absolute power and somehow got there and everyone was like still cool with that.
So I would like to remind you that the Sex Pistols did that song God Save the Queen in a fascist regime. So certainly I'm not the first person to suggest that a power that we regarded as largely benevolent and well structured has been accused of being fascist in nature, though it's also worth pointing out that the Sex Pistols were anti-authoritarian, anti-establishment shitpost punks. So whether or not they truly believed that the constitutional monarchy of UK was in fact fascist is disputable.
Yeah, but see, we're gonna run out of time soon, and we still haven't shown how stupid fascism is.
I think we
Because we haven't been able to
because
really-
what we've shown is that fascism isn't any one system of power, but rather a label that we overbroadly apply to avoid thinking.
Is it weird that I'm not satisfied that I want to define fascism just so I can break it? Is that weird? I want it properly defined so I can actually break the damn thing already.
Here's the problem, though. We have examples of states that researchers broadly agree are fascist. And if we start looking for commonalities, the commonality ultimately is that they've, as nation states, transgressed against the broader social order. They have committed crimes against humanity, crimes at war, crimes against their own people, unjust enrichment of people in positions of power at the expense of the average citizen. That's just called corruption. We've got a word for that one already. The commonality, the common thread in all these things that are called fascist is that as humans, we broadly agree that they did the wrong thing.
Yeah, although I will say this, there is one thing that is completely just one-to-one between fascism and communism. Fascists and communists, they both kind of have an idea of the problems in society. And in some ways, they can even be spot on. However, their proposed reasons for what is wrong with society and their proposed solutions are absolutely stupid.
Removed from reality.
Yeah, completely. And on top of that, most of the problems that they speak of are essentially the reason for the existence of those problems, those challenges, the defects in the systems of governments around the world are actually attributable to corruption. Take out the corruption, you don't have those problems.
Okay, so I'd like to use an example of a indisputably fascist regime here. Because
keep in mind we're going to run out of time very soon.
You can live with it. You can live with it. It's worth it. So
2 minutes.
For reasons, recently I was looking at how the Weimar Republic, the German Republic, fell, and a large part of it was that the grand coalition of parties, headed by Müller, just sort of didn't agree anymore, and this disagreement came at the same time as a worldwide economic depression. For the last few years of the Weimar Republic, the government was being held together by a series of presidential emergency decrees. And these are the sort of legal instruments that should be used when you're being invaded, when you have massive famines, when half the country's electricity isn't working, not just because you're desperately trying to hold the government together, because otherwise this experiment was a failure. And because of that, it was the perfect situation for the average German to develop a distrust of the governmental apparatus. It wasn't corruption in that case. It wasn't corruption. It was trying to hold the nation together using completely the wrong tools. And so you have a jumped up little corporal who somehow managed to survive World War I, snapping his boots together and saying, you know what, we can make Germany great again. We can end this uncertainty. We can rise up as a unified nation to be respected. And people identified with that message because while the lights were on and the food was mostly coming, they could see that their government was falling apart and that the rest of the world wasn't faring much better. This was a case where an idealistic demagogue was in the right place at the right time to affect change and, ironically, plunge Germany right into another economic depression because he was also an incompetent fuckwit.
But the causes of all that dysfunction
weren't corruption in nature. They were just poor circumstances.
See, I don't know enough about this to actually really speak on it at all.
Yeah, this is why I have like my period of history to point to, because we can take a lot of lessons from Nazi Germany. And I think it's our choice whether we want to take the lessons of things that worked and that benefited the people. For instance, socialized healthcare and excellent healthcare for expectant mothers and massive programs of infrastructure rebuilding. And we can take those good lessons as things that benefit the people and apply them without the Nazism. Or we can look at that period of history and say, nope, never again, not dealing with that ever again. We're writing the whole thing off as bad. And just like with the label of fascism, we can just slap it on there, chuck it in a box, and learn nothing from it.
It's kind of like that saying, say what you will about Mussolini, at least the trains ran on time.
They didn't, though. That's the problem.
I mean, I know that, you know, the point of that sort of those words is to illustrate that
even monsters can do good sometimes.
Well, the lesson I took away from it is not partly that not everything they did was necessarily bad for their country, but also that people are willing to tolerate certain evils if things actually work to a degree. You know, if you're able to make
if people are able to convince themselves that those evils don't exist or that those evils are overstated, absolutely.
We were supposed to be shit posting. Now we're actually getting to serious discussion. All right.
Well, here's the problem. When you start off with why communism and fascism are both stupid, with somebody who has actually read a few history books once upon a time, you eventually get through the fact that most fascists and communists are incompetent idiots who are ideologically driven and have no solutions to society's ills. And you get down to the nitty-gritty of why those systems haven't actually worked.
Maybe we'll talk about this again sometime and not a shitpost when I've actually learned a little bit more about the Weimar Republic. Wait, was it Weimar or Weimar? Or is that
Weimar.
technically Weimar?
Technically, they're the same word. It's just that one of them is pronounced correctly.
Okay.
There are two languages. There is German and there are mistakes.
All right, well, we'll catch you later, everyone, as we've clearly run over time. So, yeah. Take care.
Ciao.